the whole suit.
I didn't see the background, but that is looking pretty good.
Yeah.
I can't, hold on.
Perfect.
All
Well
right.
played, Chris.
I'm gonna take this off because this beard is so itchy. I thought I was gonna be able to do the whole episode like this, but no.
The opener was worth it. It was to have this on camera.
Ugh.
I'm
will leave
so
the hat
proud
on
of
now.
you, Chris.
This isn't gonna work. Hey everyone. I'm gonna try to get the hat on, otherwise we're gonna get started. Nope, I don't think this is gonna work.
It's okay. The jacket is. Oh, there you go.
Is it okay?
That looks great.
Really? It doesn't look great, but I'm looking at myself. But
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Chris, you're looking good.
Okay.
Embrace it.
All right. We're gonna get the footage without the fireplace in the background, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Cause like half my face looks like it's cut off.
Your agenda items are just hot. Your words are on fire.
I know. I feel a little flustered. What's going on, everyone? Let's just like settle in for a second here. Give me a second to cool off. I was out there trying to put that suit on. It wasn't working. I was like, I'm running out of time. What am I gonna do here? And here we are. With a nice little
Pull it
hat.
off.
Getting started. We got 2 episodes of Demand Gen Live left before we head out for the holidays, but to make sure that we could post-produce them and then post them on LinkedIn before the holiday, we actually had to do it this episode, not the next episode. You're welcome, Miles Campbell, for the planning. So, getting in here, a couple of quick announcements before we get started. I was doing a keynote this morning, and there was something really interesting that kind of like popped into my head, which is I started to think and realize some people have like what is your superpower, right? Some people are super empathetic or highly creative or super athletic or very mathematical. And I came to the realization that my superpower is strategy, being able to look at the landscape and see things, see openings that other people don't see connections that other people don't see. A lot of it is because I am out there looking for it and other people aren't, but I think there's a huge part of it that just goes into how my brain processes it. And so on Thursday of this week, on Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern, I'll be hosting a keynote at 12 p.m. Eastern with no notes, just unfiltered, my thoughts on strategy. So it should be a good one. Hope to see you all there. That's a European and UK friendly time. There'll be some thoughts and insights about that you could weave into your 2022 plan. So it won't be so like fluffy and high level that you won't be able to be actionable. You know me, it'll be actionable, but there'll be some serious strategy stuff in there as well. So I hope to see you there. That would be awesome. Now, getting into the agenda here, I think I'm going to start with the evolution of RevOps, marketing ops, that type of stuff is on the agenda because I've been thinking about this a lot recently, is that it feels like there's a major divergence going on here. Hold on one second, jeez. It feels like there's a major divergence going on here where let's just center it on RevOps for the rest of the conversation, but it means marketing ops or RevOps, depending on how you use it in your company. This divergence is happening that I see where we have a lot of people moving into a tactical bucket and other people moving into a strategy bucket. And the people that are focused on strategy are attached to the CMO at the hip. And the people that are tactical are taking orders in Asana or Monday.com with tasks. And I'm helping people understand this because I actually think that we need better or different terminology to categorize these things, because anything ops related is just getting put into the RevOps bucket without a lot of segmentation and things. And so I think that the definition is getting very cloudy and hard to understand what people are doing because it's just a mishmash of a bunch of different stuff. And so I have some categories here and some things that I'm seeing about these two different buckets for this specific function. So you got the tactical side. On the tactical side, there's data flow, tech implementations and integrations, overall maintenance, marketing automation, campaign operations, those types of stuff, the tactical task-based type of work. And on the strategy side, what we have is planning, annual planning, quarterly planning, monthly planning, forecasting, attribution, reporting, insights, go-to-market strategy, customer experience optimization. And so over time, I'm going to be thinking about how to distinguish these two, because though I just read you off those roles, those are two very different roles and responsibilities. And right now it's just getting mashed into one function. So somebody over here is the director of RevOps, but I don't know which ones are they doing. Do they, like, I see some people that are only in the strategy bucket, and I see some people that never touch the strategy bucket. So I feel like there's a divergence here. There's a lot more thinking that goes into it, but I'm hoping that some people in the audience with experience will be able to generate some questions so we can get deeper into this topic and really start to form the idea. But I am seeing a trend, and we're going to think about how to reframe the strategic side of operations, which is, I think about that as part of demand gen. The things that I just listed here: planning, forecasting, attribution, reporting, insights, go-to-market strategy, customer experience optimization. That's demand generation. It's what I mean. Maybe we can give it a more specific name, but as a demand gen person, like, I'm doing all that stuff. It's part of the gig. So, and I think that the best demand gen people have this crossing over between ops and demand, because you need it to really do demand well. So I would love to grab a couple questions here, but that's my opening thoughts on this divergence that's happening.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for all of us to hear just a little bit more context around the thinking, maybe even taking a step back a little bit. The agenda topic called out RevOps and marketing ops. You just called out the distinction between strategy and tactics. And so maybe just re-clarifying it. There were some questions around that, and then there are a couple questions coming in. So just to like reset the context.
Totally.
Then,
Let's broad. Go a little bit more broad. So, at some point, I remember being a marketer where there were no like operations titles. And then all of a sudden there was a marketing operations and sales ops titles that kind of came about. And then over time, driven I don't know this for sure, but my guess, driven through a technology vendor, created this new thing called revenue operations, shortened to RevOps, that is supposed to connect marketing ops, sales ops, CS ops. When it was formed, really people were just putting marketing ops and sales ops together. CS ops had a little bit of a way to go. Over time, they try and put them together, but I think that most people are either focused on inside of the sales process or post-sale. Over time, I'm seeing a little bit more crossover. And from there, they took all of these different operations components that you could do, which historically, what's been asked about operations is mainly in the in the tactical sense. So where operations came from: tech implementations, integrations with Salesforce admin type of work, building reports, whether that's ad hoc or dashboards, or like gathering data for a board meeting or something like that. Marketing automation, like building out email nurtures and workflows and forms and things like that. In general, campaign ops, like we need to put together our webinar, here's the form, here's how people are going to register, all of those different tactical components. And over time, through I'm not even really sure, the elevation of marketing, the introduction of more and more technology, the way that executives are asking more from marketers, that operations started to need to fill in this role that is the planning, attribution, forecasting, things like that, that historically these things weren't done by a marketing ops person. I've been working in B2B companies enough time to do that. So the responsibility has shifted from once maybe head of demand or potentially even VP marketing or CMO, that is now being shifted to an operations person. And I just see, like I mentioned, I see a divergence. I interact with people that mainly lean in the strategy bucket. I think that is if you are in marketing ops, I think that's where you want to get to long term, where you're basically the chief of staff of the CMO. That's actually how I'm seeing it being implemented when you're in the strategy bucket. And then if you're in the focused more on the tactics, maybe you're a little bit more junior, maybe you have a lot of things to learn or not, but in the tactical side, that you're mainly focused on, like I mentioned, things that are like tactical, low value, reactive, people put in tickets and you do the work. And so the main part of me talking about this is, one, to just talk through my initial thoughts on this, because this isn't fully formed opinion. So help leveraging all of you to kind of help put this together. But the insight is there. The insight's been there. I've been on podcasts talking about it. I was on the marketing operations podcast, the Mop Stars, a bunch of other ones, where this is an effect that's happening in the market. And I think there's an opening for the people that want to focus on the strategy side, because I don't see a lot of people doing it really well.
Kai has a great question, I think, to continue this thread. Kai, I'm going to bring you on live. It's wonderful to have you.
How we doing?
DGL.
Chris, I hate that I missed you when you were down here in Tampa.
Yeah.
But hopefully you get back down here
Thanks,
soon.
man. Yes, next time.
Yeah, are you seeing people over allocate on either side? I mean, I think intuitively it seems like maybe over allocating on tactics and not focusing enough on, that's at least what I'm seeing, but over allocating to tactics instead of strategy. Would you say that's on, or what do you think?
Totally. Yeah, that's absolutely what's happening. The business needs the strategy side, but the resources are not filling that gap right now. So companies end up getting it from somewhere else. Consultants, a VP of demand, or someone that, is positioned to at least put something together. But yes, it's overweighted. I think that there's a couple of realities to that. I think that the function generally doesn't have enough. There's an over demand for the function right now. So there's more jobs and more things than people that have the skills to do them. And so because there's that overage, that people are potentially more junior getting into the craft, when then people not understanding the true function. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago on Demand Gen Live. Like, the function is so broad, so poorly defined in my view, so many things, that how do you really know what exactly you're supposed to do? So I'm suggesting that people to think a little bit more about the exact definitions and where the lines get drawn. But yes, it's absolutely overweighted on the tactics, because that's what it's historically been.
I got a couple new questions and points to kind of make this topic a little more lively. I want to bring Rob up next.
Love it.
Rob, go ahead. You're on.
Hey guys, been listening for a while. Great to be on with you guys.
Great to have you here.
How much of this issue, in your view, Chris, is driven by the marketing tech companies that are really pushing their product more than any form of philosophy about marketing?
I blame the vendors for a lot of things, but I don't blame them for this one. I believe that there's an overarching misunderstanding about how to do marketing from a strategy perspective. The misunderstanding is that you need all of these technology tools in order to do it, because you're getting told by vendors and Gartner that you need them. So that misunderstanding is driving an implementation of tech. But where you place the real accountability on this is that the executive teams of the companies, right? Like, there's other places to get strategy information. There's other places to figure out what you should do. There's other places to look at alternatives of just buying a bunch of tech. So in my view, the kind of that is mainly driven through the leadership at companies not truly understanding where buyers are right now and where the market is shifting and adjusting to that. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think any tool is only as valuable as the user's quality of use is. So, any of us looking to incorporate any tool into our lives or business, if we don't understand the why behind it and have that connected to the business outcomes that we're looking for, we're asking for problems long term.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think
Awesome.
I have a first. Thanks, Rob. It's good to see you. Enjoy having you each week. I think we have a first time live participant, Mason, who we know from LinkedIn. I loved your question, Mason. Welcome. Go ahead and ask live.
Hey, Chris. I think it's been a long time coming. I think
Hey.
I've listened to 160 episodes straight, so you may have talked about this recently. But I know, again, from the past 160, there's a lot of your conversations that revolve around how you stay in the tactics day to day with at least one client.
Mm-hmm.
But it also sounds like in this conversation, it sounds like you're saying lean more heavily into the strategy. So are you saying for marketers to grow today that they need to divorce from the tactics, or are you saying stay involved with the tactics and also grow strategically? I'm just trying to figure out where you're communicating the line.
This is great because there's just nuances to clarify. So my belief is that, especially if you look at marketing broadly or business broadly, that you can set a strategy, but the real strategy gets continuously iterated on and built as you execute and gets better. You do some things, you get data, quantitative and qualitative, you make adjustments, and you continuously keep going. When in the absence of the execution, you lose sight of what's happening and you don't effectively make changes, or you make changes late, or you don't see insights that would help you make better decisions. So at a broad level, that's what I mean about staying tactical from a marketing standpoint. When we look at the marketing ops side, I think that this is more of a split on how people think about the role and to think differently about how they frame up the role, because I believe that there's just confusion in the market. When you think about whether you're going to actually go out and execute the tactics, it's tough. It's not tough for me to say this, but it's just the truth, is that I think that a lot of that, the tactical level, is just low value stuff. I don't know what to say. And so somebody's got to, I guess I keep correcting myself. I was going to say somebody's got to build the email nurture, but you don't. Somebody's got to set up the campaign in HubSpot, but you don't. You know what I mean? But I just think generally it's low value work. And the thing where you really get the insights from the execution is when it touches the customer, right? So whether it's an actual active touch or whether there's something involved in that, the back end, like how the data gets processed. You know, if you use an if-then statement or split it into two workflows, like you're not learning anything new in those types of environments. So that's kind of like my hot take on the differences. I think that execution is critical, but as we get into the clarification, the execution is critical, especially when it's when the customer is involved.
So if I may just reiterate back,
Please.
Stay close to the customer, focus on the high level strategy, and if you're looking to grow professionally and as a marketer, focus less on essentially what you said, which was low value, like setting up a campaign, and focus more on how do we get better customer insights that will then inform a strategy that we can iterate on. Because, for example, if this had not worked like it has for the past year or so, you would have figured out how to iterate on it. But if you had focused so much on setting up the Zoom meeting more so than the actual customer insights, you might not have had as much opportunity to learn.
Yeah, for sure. Like the things that you, the insights that you get when you execute, I'm just going to go more deep into like the things that I'm talking about when you're in the execution, the things that you see. is that when you're in the execution, you see when you run the Facebook ad and you see 5 people comment with the exact job titles that you're going after, and you read what they're saying, right? Like, you're up in the boardroom, you don't see those things. You don't get the reaction. You're not close enough to it. If you're doing this event, like, I can see your people's reactions. I can read the chat. I can see how many people sign up. I can see when people drop off and when more people come on, whether people are late or on time, all these details that people that only are up in the boardroom don't see. And I think that those are really like the kind of insights that it's looking for. So if it was like, we got to set up this campaign to have tracking in HubSpot, it's like, let's have someone else do that. And let's go talk to the customer about, whether or not this like email flow is actually what they want, or if the content in the email is actually what they need, I hope that was helpful, and that was a really great question.
Just to poke the bear one last time.
Yeah.
Who is it then? Who's setting up those things? Because to some extent, especially in a lot of organizations that are more startup, you've only got the one marketer. So how do you balance, or one or two marketers? So how do you balance essentially doing the right things while also making sure that all of your I's are dotted and all your T's are crossed?
Yeah. In situations with startups with one marketer or 8 people or things like that, you're going to have to do all of it, right? I've been the one digital marketer. I've done all of it. I've built the automation. I know how it works. I basically did things that HubSpot's support didn't even know that you could do. So I've set up the attribution. I've worked in it. That's how I figured out that attribution has a bunch of flaws, is because I've done all those things and figured it out. So I guess as I talk through it, there's some value in really understanding how those things work. Yeah.
All right.
But I think that
Thanks.
You're gonna have to do all the work when you're in a startup environment, but this is for like the company that has 30 marketers, right? Or the company that has 10 to 10, 20, 50 marketers. And in those cases, like, they typically only have one marketing ops person. But if they thought about it differently and they thought, okay, like, we actually have someone that's focused on the tactical, and maybe we need 2 people focused on the tactical and one person focused on the strategy, I think they might get better results if they thought about it as not like one big thing.
I don't want to monopolize the time, but one big thing. So essentially focusing on separating out all of the different components of marketing so that you can then get the best out of each piece.
I'm talking specifically in marketing operations, which is a sub-function of marketing. And then I'm only looking at dividing it into 2 places, more like strategic and tactical. You could sub-segment it down in very large companies like a Slack or companies like that have a large team that's probably very much so segmented. But for a company that has like 1 to 5 marketing operations people, which is probably a majority of people that are listening to this podcast, I just think that thinking about it in 2 separate ways might get better results, because you need a completely different experience level, skill set to do either one.
That was a great back
Nice.
and forth.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mason. I hope to see you back.
Absolutely. My wife just got home, so I'm going to go take care of a nurse.
Cool.
See y'all next week.
See you next week.
Sounds good. See you next week. A couple people sent me some questions they wanted me to ask on their behalf. Who knew this would be such a hot topic? What does the ideal RevOps function look like, and how and when would you recommend people hire for it?
So I've seen this set. I'll let you know how I've seen this set up before, which is RevOps split up. So the operations across marketing ops, sales ops, success, and then into buckets of enablement, operations, insights and analytics, and tools and technology. So 4 buckets like that. So I've seen companies sub-segment that out, which can make sense in a larger company. Like, that's kind of how we're building out our operations team. That's how we're thinking about it structurally. But we're not going to have a like marketing ops person, right? We're going to have just a person that's focused on the operations or the enablement or the insights across the entire thing, which is key nuance, right? Everyone, and I've said this multiple times, but I still just see it happening. Every company is talking about how RevOps aligning the entire revenue operations team, things like that. And then when you look at the operations function, it says RevOps, but then you just literally have a marketing ops person, a sales ops person, and a customer success person, and it goes back into a silo and defeats the whole, like a lot of the purpose in my view. The only thing that's different is that it's rolling up to one leader instead of into individual, like the CMO, CRO, things like that. So yeah.
Awesome. We've got some other questions that are going in different directions. So I think it's a good time to start segueing. Did you want to hit your second agenda item first, and then we can open it up for the AMA, or should I keep the questions coming and should we go in a different direction?
Let's keep the questions coming in, and I might have to take off this thing.
Okay, I think people got screenshots and
Yeah.
So
I'll keep the hat on.
it had the intended effect.
Oh my.
All right, Patrick, you have been coming up with some awesome questions lately, and you have a few tonight. So I'm going to bring you on so that you can ask a few of your questions live. Welcome to the show.
Hey, yeah, back again. No flights tonight, so appreciate it.
Hey, good to see you.
I put my Australian Christmas background in the back for you as well. It's 86 here at Christmas.
Nice,
so
rub it in.
86 in freedom units for everyone playing at home. Yeah, so a couple of questions following up from stuff that I asked last week. I really wanted to drill in and like get the definitions, but like get some clarity around these things, right? So one of the big things I was thinking about is that we were talking about these concept of hero and like stage 3 sales converting at 25%, right? To me, it seems like that one of the big underlying assumptions of this that's not been talked about yet, at least as far as I've seen, is that we're assuming that sales has a dialed in process, right? And that this process actually works well, and that there's not holes in it or gaps in it or something there that should be done or that can be better, and nothing's perfect. I guess my real question is like, how are we validating that process is one indeed actual like useful or helpful, or is not the source of missed opportunities versus marketing, right? We spoke last week about there's a number of filters before you get there, like stage 1 and 2, etc. But then if we're going to stage 3, I'm just trying to get the separation between the two, because I just feel like this is something that's going to come up a lot, right? So if I can get clarity around how to find the problem.
If everyone's operating as one team, is there really a separation? You know, like when I see these things, it's not like who's at fault, right? Or not even who's at fault, but like who's accountable, right? Is it the process? Is it marketing? It's the strategy. It's the go-to-market strategy. Something's broken down. It could be neither one. We got to go out and solve that. So I don't. I've done this a lot, and we do it at a lot of companies, and the win rates stay consistent or get better. Regardless, Series A, Series C, post-IPO, like it'll fluctuate on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, but when you break it out over quarters, like or a trailing 6 month or things like that, it's stable. So, and if something was going like seriously wrong, typically it would go seriously wrong before that stage. The things that would impact it, I'm just thinking out loud here, would be SDRs, like the comp plan change in SDRs. So SDRs push a bunch of shit there that doesn't belong there, but typically that stage will be defined as they've already sat on a meeting with an AE and then they move to that stage. And so even that would have gotten filtered out before that part of the process. And so just because it's so, it's challenging to get a buyer that far, that what I've seen the data is that either the buyer will self-select out or companies will filter out the junk before they get there. So typically we don't see this, like, it would be wrong I can't confidently say every company sees this, but in the companies that I've looked at recently, like win rates go up by from 19 to 30% in one instance for companies as you do this, because over time, buyers are more and more educated. 12 months after like creating true demand for 12 months, like your win rate should get better. Your sales cycle should get shorter, right? Because the people that are entering your pipeline now know way more about your product than they did 12 months ago. So as a marketer, generally, I almost never blame sales for anything. When I I never like look at that as a reason. The thing that I look at is that the comparison between outbound and inbound, right? Or sales source or marketing source, however your company chalks it up. And I use that as a comparison, right? So if marketing win rates are going down, or if marketing sales cycles are getting longer, the first thing that I do is I look over to, is the same effect happening on outbound? And if it is, and typically those things will happen, that you can then think this is a broader company challenge. There might be something in the market. It might be environmental. So it starts to get you to think. But that's the best way to look and see if something's wrong on the like marketing process side, is to compare it to what you're seeing in the outbound metrics. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I've said this before, but like, in 2017 till now, like my thought process in my mind is like, I know that there's not a checkout button on our website, but if there was, that's what I'm trying to get people to do. So like I market as if the only thing that I care about is someone like basically is done buying, checks out on our website, and it like changes your strategy and behavior when you think like that, because it's like, I need to get someone to want to buy, not to fill out a form, not to say yes to a gift card, not to click on my thing so that we get to de-anonymize their account and call them an MQA so we can cold call them.
Okay. Yeah, no, that helps. That helps a lot. I think, just trying to get that separation, because I have a marketing agency, right? So when we come in, what I'd like to do is validate, is there some holes in this process that we can help to look at, that we can come in and help to solve as we start to do the market. Otherwise, we start doing something on one end, hold ourselves to a metric we've said we're happy to hold ourselves to, but we've missed that there's other points that everything's falling down because we just haven't integrated enough, we haven't understood it enough, we haven't sort of taken the time to observe that.
Yeah, over time, I'm not sure where you are in like your business growth and life cycle, but it was kind of like that for us at the beginning, but now we have such a large, robust data set of companies that are so similar that it's like, I can go through, ask people for like 4 reports, look at the 4 reports and be like, this part's not working, this part's working well, like something's going wrong here, just because I have benchmarks of what it should look like. So I think through experience, you'll be able to point those things out. Where companies miss the most is on trying to figure out what are actual high intent leads that I want to send to sales. That's one big miss. The second big miss is the handoff from a person that's high intent saying, I want to talk to your sales rep, to actually getting into the meeting. Those are the 2 places that companies miss the most when it comes to like marketing, a non-marketing process, marketing in quotes for people that are listening, a non-marketing process that affects marketing performance. The handoff from marketing to sales is the number 1.
Cool. Okay, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I have a follow-up, if that's all right.
Yeah, bring it.
Awesome, cool. So another follow-up, I think this was sort of carrying over from last week, but I think we touched on parts of it just now, is you said last week that there's basically no quality control for when marketing pushes garbage. And then because of that, say, stage 3 win rates can go down. I guess I wanted to push back a little bit on that, or at least get some clarity in terms of things, because in my mind, stage 1 of that sales process is the filter, right? If you don't make it past that, the filter is, that's where the garbage generally stops. If I get on a call and look, I don't want to buy, I'm not really that interested, I just wanted your download or something, isn't that the first filter to that? And then I guess the next question with that would be from that is, what else are we looking for outside of this 25%? Because theoretically, if I push 100 leads and 80% of them are garbage, but I'm still above the 25% at stage 3, then I'm still technically meeting that definition that you've set, but I'm pushing garbage. We're just getting lucky, or the TAM is big enough that I'm able to reach that many people, that once it filters down, it just works out, and I think I'm on a gravy train when I'm not.
Mm-hmm. So the first one is like, if you define stage one ops that way, that's what would happen. But that's not how most companies define stage one ops. Most companies define stage one op when an SDR books an intro call with a buyer, has not talked to them, they booked a time, so they mark it as they create an opportunity, and then the SDR is going to do the first call with the prospect to do BANT or something like that. And then when that call is done, it's going to move to stage two when there's a thing for an AE, and then the AE is going to have the call, and then it might move to stage three. That's generally, but every company's process is different, which is why I'm defining it based on a performance metric that everyone can align to, rather than subjective definitions like that. When it comes to the garbage side, this wouldn't work, right? So if you have 20% going in that are good and 80% that are junk, you're not going to win all the 20%. You're going to probably win 33% of the 20, which is going to give you 6. The rest of the 80 are going to move to close loss, and you're not going to get there. So like getting above 25% from this stage is hard to do. And like, we have enough data across a lot of companies that this will typically tease its way out at stage 3, sometimes for processes at stage 4, depending on what's going on, to get to a 25 to 30% win rate. And I think that we have the most efficient, super high win rate process on our own side because of how we go to market. And ours is 33%, but our 33% from stage 2, but we don't have an SDR involved. So stage 2 is actually like what most companies would call stage 3. But if ours is 33, then and we've seen it enough at a lot of companies, like you're going to be in the 25 to 40 range all the time. So, and that's out of 100. So if you pushed 80% garbage, then you would actually, I can't do the math in my head, but you get what I'm saying. It would water down the whole thing, and you'd miss the metric pretty badly, which would then push the stage, the metric, the stage that you optimize for later in the process. And when it got pushed later in the process, you would look and you would say, which ones are getting to stage 3, and going further, and which ones aren't. And then you would see, these 20 over here that are good are the ones that are making it far. These 80 that are coming from these sources are garbage. If they're garbage and they're not getting to the metric that we need to get to, then we should cut them. Let's cut them and try and get more of the 20. So it's almost like a flag to tell you something's wrong, to look at what's happening, to separate the good stuff from the bad stuff, and then get back to business.
Cool. Copy that. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. I don't want to monopolize the time. I think that answered a lot, and I think there's a couple of things that I think you answered there that I would have followed up on. So
awesome.
Appreciate it.
Hope you come back next week and ask more about this. I love the questions, and this is something that we're going to keep talking about.
Count on it.
Good to have you on, Patrick. All right, I promised Stephen to come on next. He has a Facebook question. Stephen, it's good to have you back. Welcome to the show.
Yep. Thank you. Happy holidays to both of you. Thanks for having me.
Happy holidays. Great to have you.
Yeah, I have the same hat, actually. I'm just not wearing it.
Nice.
I just actually started a new job, and we're trying to go over like our marketing strategy for next year. And at the moment, I'm trying to push for some Facebook ads because it's a little cheaper, as you're aware. What are some good rebuttals when they say they don't really understand it as, something that you should be using for B2B?
So I'm going to cover that with you afterwards, but I would argue that like the decision of using Facebook as a channel is tactical, not strategic.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we think about and I'm going to go through this in a ton of detail on Thursday. So if you could be there, I think it'd be really helpful. We'll also publish it on the podcast so you can listen afterwards. But from a strategy standpoint, it's like, where do buyers hang out? When do they want to talk to our rep? How are we going to get them this information in a way that's most efficient? And then you might end up with we'll use Facebook, but when it comes down to it, it's the fact that buyers want to do most of the research on their own. That's the insight. So if that's the insight, that we need to leverage marketing or sales using awareness channels or dark social channels to get this information to our buyers so that they learn those things independently, because that's how they want to learn, so that once they're educated, they're going to go and have internal conversations. They're going to go ask their peers. They're going to do all the things that we know that buyers do when they're interested in buying. and then they're going to come to us when they're ready to buy, because that's what they want to do when they're ready to buy. That's like how I think about strategy. I'm going to go into a lot more depth around that. But when people say Facebook is not a channel for B2B, I've done a couple of things. I can go directly in there and search the job titles, and it will tell you how many people, and some changes have happened to the algorithm, but somebody literally said that respiratory therapists don't use Facebook. And I was like, we know, because the data is public and they're healthcare practitioners, that we know that there's 56,000 respiratory therapists in the US because they have to be certified. And I go in and type in respiratory therapist job title and respiratory therapist field of study, and they come out with 52,000 out of 56,000. So our people are on here, and then we deliver the ads to those people, and we get 42,000 reach. So we just hit, I don't know, can't do the math in my head, but 75% of our entire market, we just hit them with these ads with this content in 24 hours. So do they not use it, or do you just think that because it's a Facebook that they don't use it in the way that we think, right? And so the data is obvious, it's there. I don't need to have an opinionated conversation with somebody. It's just pull the data, people use this stuff. I can go and spend $20 and prove to you that these people see these ads on here. The place where it breaks down is people just take their own opinion about how they do things and then assume that all the buyers are like them. So they read a headline about how Facebook's only for B2C, or how, they heard from their CRO friend that they did some experiments with Facebook ads that they didn't know zero details on, but they heard that it didn't work, so they just write it off, right? They've never run an ad themselves. They have no idea. So I think generally people are undereducated on the capabilities, and then I can just at this point pull from experience and talk through the success that most of we have companies that spend $300,000 a month on media. We push $150K through Facebook, and it's by far the best performing channel. So the key is that people screw it up because they try and use it for lead gen. And when you use Facebook for lead gen in the absence of enrichment and expensive conversion rates and stuff like that you get shitty data. And so all they do is they look, oh, I got a Gmail. Oh, that person's job title isn't capitalized. Oh, stuff like that. And then they write it off as a channel because of that. But the key is that these people use the platform. We need to figure out how to tell a business story on a personal platform is the key to it. But it's not Facebook's fault. Facebook and Instagram work very well. It has definitely the most scale of B2B buyers of any social network. And we just need to adjust the strategy to be focused more on telling someone a story like a television commercial or a billboard, not running lead gen like they're in Google ads or something like that. But generally, also, I'll note to you, depending on who you're targeting, you might not be able to get to those people without a tool to help you target. And depending on your budget, it may not even be worth buying the tool.
Sounds fair.
What were you thinking, or do you think that would work? What I just said?
What you said? Yeah, I'll rewatch the tape and listen again. But yep, it was good detail.
Cool.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Always good to see you. I got a good question from Rob. Why don't I bring him on next, and then we can get back to the second agenda topic. How does that sound?
Love it.
All right, Rob, I liked your next question. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me again. So I'm working with a SaaS firm that's actually Series D currently, and trying to help them think more synergistically about sales and marketing as team revenue together. And what I'm bumping up against is a sales leader that's very resistant to any form of demand gen or inbound. He's really committed to really terrible attribution-based email sequences to cold lists, and it's not working, and the numbers are already showing that it's not working. I have kind of a set of talking points for this meeting that I have coming up, Chris, but I'd be curious to see how you would approach that conversation.
Sounds like the people that you're working with don't want to. This is not a misalignment on marketing and sales being one team. This is a misalignment on go-to-market strategy, which, by the way, is where all go-to-market strategy differences in opinion on how you should do go-to-market strategy or on metrics are the only, and some of them cross over between those two. Those are the only two reasons why there's ever misalignment with sales and marketing. The main root is that the sales leader, the people that do marketing, the CEO, potentially the person in customer success, all think that we should be going to market differently. And most often, the head of sales makes the calls. It's just my experience working in companies. So it by definition creates misalignments. Going into that conversation, I'm not based on what I've heard, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of room to move here. I am wearing a hat, but it's not a magic hat. What do you think you should do?
I'm not sure who all will be around the table. I'm hopeful that someone that is at 30,000 feet and has some ability to change the trajectory of the go-to-market strategy will be around the table. I'm still in kind of early discovery stages with the conversation as a whole, but there's still a lot to learn for me about the culture of the company and how to approach that. But I do know the sales leader will be on this next call.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, is there anybody that is at the company that is bought into your approach, which is why you're having this conversation to begin with? Like, are there other players that are aligned to you, or does that not exist in this scenario?
No, the current Marcom leader, who admits that she's more communications minded, that's really her core competency, is very much on the path towards demand gen and the kind of things that you guys all talk about, and has some influence upwards. And it's, again, very early, but I think she is sort of the biggest advocate for the approach that I'm hoping to bring to the table.
So you need to get on a call with her, and you need to learn as much as possible. You need to find out about the C-level executives. You should find out who's going to be in the meeting before you have the meeting so that you can prep for it. I'll let you answer, Chris, but couldn't help myself.
Yeah, no, please do. These so I'm just going to tell you the truth here, right? Like, I come up with some answer, like go and talk to the executives, go and collect some data, things like that. But just for you, I spend zero time trying to convince people of anything. I've done it. I've had to do it before. I understand that I'm almost always unsuccessful at doing that. And so instead of doing that, I just give people information, and then they can self-select that when they're ready. I acknowledge that might not be, I'm not sure if you're a consultant, I didn't get it, if you're a consultant or if you work there, so I'm kind of a little bit off. Maybe you could help me with that real quick.
Yeah, I'm actually serving kind of as an outside consultant.
Yeah, great. So one of the things that I've enjoyed the most about being a consultant is that I don't get emotional about company decisions anymore. When I worked at a company and somebody did, when the head of sales didn't want to go with my demand strategy, or someone shut down my request for $1 million in budget when I knew it was the best way to grow the company and they put it somewhere else, those things, I had a emotional response to those types of things. Now when my customers do dumb shit, I don't think about it at all. So as a consultant, I think it's an interesting position to be in, because you can help people try and move, and I have the best intentions ever to try and help my customers be more successful, but people need to take the steps in order to get there, in order to do it. And all I can do is point them in the right direction. Ultimately, they need to make some decisions there. So that's how I approach it.
Yeah, that's super helpful.
Good luck, Rob. Let us
Yeah.
know how it goes. All right. I like this second agenda topic. I'm curious to see where you go with it.
Yeah.
You want to get into why you need to budget differently for content and creative in 2020.
Yeah, and maybe we can even go more broadly. It's why you need to think differently about content and creative in 2022. So on the content side, the things that I see companies work on for content if you like, is SEO, sales enablement, webinars, ebooks, right? So these traditional formats of content and with antiquated distribution methods that are easy to track, that don't happen on the platforms where people actually pay attention. So we need to think differently about what content means, shift that. We need to think differently about creative. When I see creative, I think that people think mainly about websites, like webinar graphics, landing pages, collateral, cut sheets, stuff like that, banner ads. Maybe people spend a little bit of time thinking about copywriting for their sales emails, right? And I kind of consider that creative. But we need to, so that's like how people are thinking about it right now. I think we need to think completely differently about these two things. The main change being that you need to be focused on native distribution, native consumption. So that's the big shift, right? So if we think about strategy, the big shift from 5 years ago is that people used to go to websites and read blogs and download ebooks and do things on your websites or your competitors' websites. And through the scale and maturity of social networks that people use, people now, instead of doing that, get their information inside of the feed. They consume the content there, they get the information, maybe they click on a couple of links, but you know how you use it. The majority of the stuff you consume in there, and then you leave. And the impact gets made inside of the channel, not on the website somewhere else. An additional shift that's happened here is the shift from desktop to mobile. That most of the content that's happening inside of this phone that people use to browse social networks mostly is on a mobile device and on social networks. So the change has been, and it's hard to like download an ebook and consume it on this. It's hard to do some of the things that people ask you to do on a phone. I get that your buyers convert on desktop. I understand that. I see the data myself. But I also know how people use these things, and a lot of the actual consumption is happening here. And so there's a big shift. So we need to think differently. The big shift from desktop to mobile, from web properties into social networks. So the strategy needs to be focused on native content consumption and distribution. So now that we have the think differently kind of out of the way, now let's talk about how we need to budget differently. So on the budget side, companies, and I interact with 50 of them that are our customers and a bunch of other ones that are not. The companies love to put together their $600,000 a month advertising budget. And they budget $0 on creative. Zero. Because they think that it's Google. And so the big thing is that in Google, there is no creative obligations. It's transactional. Someone types something in, you put blue letters in front of them and matches the search, and you drive them somewhere. But in social, where the shift has happened, where people are going, the distribution matters, but the content matters a lot. The content, context, distribution are all important. And so just buying the ad isn't enough in social. Just showing up with blue letters in social is not enough because there's not intent and it's not transactional. The picture and the words and the videos and things like that are what are the difference of whether or not it works. So the people out there, the question that got asked about that somebody heard that Facebook ads didn't work, it's because either your targeting sucked, your strategy sucked, or your creative sucked, or all three. So the key is that we need to start budgeting appropriately for content and creative that is going to fuel the media spend for paid social if you want to create demand in paid social. It is the end of putting a $300,000 media budget per month and then spending literally $5,000 on graphic design and just cheaping out there while the entire $300,000 in spend is wasted and inefficient with high diminishing returns because you only have 2 pictures in there. And so we need to rebalance how we think about these two things it would be the equivalent to buying a Ferrari and putting water in the gas tank. It would be equivalent to spending $7 million to run a Super Bowl commercial and then using like this Zoom video as the video, spending $5,000 on the creative while you spend $7 million on the media. And so we need to think differently about this. We're working with companies right now to put together an actual like formula for it. But let's just go in lieu of a formula. Let's just talk in sake of round numbers. So if you're spending $100,000 on media, you should plan on spending most likely $20,000 on content and creative that's built for social. Not your SEO blog that you put on social, not your webinar that you advertise on social, native content for social. 20%. So if you had a $100,000 budget, 80 on media, 20 on creative. Something like that then eventually would get to scale out. And this is also going to be dependent on your total addressable market. If you're running ABM, if you're running targeted to an account list of 50 accounts, trying to spend a lot of money, you're going to need a ton of creative to keep that system rolling, or you're just going to annoy people and have very inefficient spend showing them the same ad they've seen 100 times. And so I'm trying to help people understand, mainly for like we're in 2022 now, mainly for the budgeting aspect, because we see across a huge data set, and I'm hoping soon that we're going to have the data on it, that the volume and the variations of the creative are directly correlated to the outcomes, are directly correlated with how much spend you can push through it, are directly correlated with how much it can scale. And so if you are a company that's going to spend $300,000 on LinkedIn and Facebook ads next year, I would highly suggest considering spending $250,000 and then investing in videos, pictures, content, creative, things like that for the distribution, because it's actually going to give you a better outcome. You'll get a better outcome on $250,000 in spend with proper creative and content against $300,000 in spend with bad content and creative. Which seems super logical, but I'm in conversations with VPs and CMOs all the time, and I literally have these conversations and they don't change what they're doing. So the key insight here, and like I mentioned, we're going to help with some data so that people can really think about this, but we need to value the words when we're trying to do storytelling inside of paid social to create demand. We need to invest in the story. Simply put, I don't even need to keep going. That was it. You're trying to create demand inside of paid social to tell stories. And if you're going to do that, you need to actually think about and invest in the story that you're trying to tell. All right, I'm done.
Lisa has a question you're going to love that will let you keep going on this topic. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So my question is, how do you translate the marketing collateral, so the shift from white papers or data sheets or any of that collateral directly into the feed? I can just hear my marketers now when I say, oh, we're going to shift to just writing this all into the feed. I think their minds are going to explode and they're not going to get it. So what does that look like, even from a crawl, walk, run perspective?
You don't do this. This would be like having a television commercial that's actually a radio commercial. Get it? It's like there's one media. The cut sheet Collateral was built for one medium, which was in person. I'm going to hand this out, and I'm going to see it, and then most people throw it away. Eventually, it got the exact same thing without thinking about it. Just got moved to digital, and it was a PDF on digital. It could have easily been like if you thought about what the purpose of it was, it might have come out as something different, an experiential web page or something like that. But people don't think like that, so they just take something from an old medium and then put it in a new medium. And then taking that and moving it into social is instead of doing that, it's rethinking what is the story that we're trying to tell. Is this the appropriate place to tell it? If so, then how do we do it? So if I was going to look at it, I'd be looking at the data sheet, and I'd be looking at like, what are the key things? When I talked through strategy this morning, I went through it with people. It's like, what are the 3 to 7 to 10 things that I want the market to know? And if the market knows these 3 to 7 to 10 things, then they will be much more likely to purchase our product or have affinity to what we're doing. Right? So for us, just to give a couple examples, I'm illuminating to people that the obsession with leads drives the wrong strategy and really bad data. The really poor performance to optimize for that. People had the data in front of them that they didn't know. I'm helping raise awareness to it. When people know that, they're more likely to look at their data and see how bad it is, just like I've seen it 50 times. So you got to figure out what those 3 to 7 to 10 things are for you. And then you got to figure out, how do I package them into a video or a picture? And the easiest way to think about that is a television commercial, a billboard, so that when somebody goes by and scrolls by and sees it, they stop and consume it, they understand the message, and then over time, if we've done that 100 times with 100 different ways to say the 7 to 10 messages, that people have a much more greater understanding about the things that we believe in over time, which lead them to have more consideration for what we're doing. So I'd love to go back and forth with some follow-ups here, but I feel like it's not about moving old stuff like data sheets into the social. It's about, with a blank slate, starting over, which is what I did. Blank slate. What am I trying to accomplish? What stories am I trying to tell?
Yeah, I don't mean to convert. I'm just thinking of, as we approach the new year and we start to look at changing how we do this, it's really convincing them. We're an older company.
Convincing who?
I always tell people, I feel like this is 1985 marketing that we're trying to progress into 2020. And so, I've been preaching your message along with others about, the MQL is dead. So I'm just trying to figure out, it's a behavior change, it's a mind change. And I need them, because I think the first question that will be asked is, well, what about if people want to download something and read it later, or they want to have it to show it to their boss or send them a file to read. There's all these questions that are going to come up of how the behavior used to be. And so it's really, so I'm on board with what you're saying, but it's being able to convince the 1985 marketing group, this is how we need to change, and here's how we're going to overcome those obstacles that you think we're going to have.
So it's not, just to be clear, you're helping to have the marketing team change, or to help the executives? It seemed like what you were saying was convincing executives to do this, but now it's on the so it's the marketing team not caught up?
It's going to be from top to bottom here.
Yeah.
I mean,
what's your role?
Top to bottom. I'm sorry?
What's your role there?
So I'm lead management director for our demand generation team.
Okay. And
but
so
our when we run campaigns, which we just implemented a true demand generation team at the company. Again, really old school converting. We're just trying to now help the marketers expand outside of email and helping them understand, look, we've got multiple channels. We're just now doing some of our paid advertising campaigns, just reaching out into the channels. And so when you talk about using social and some of the other channels to not just promote a white paper, I agree with that. I agree with, we consume everything in the feed. Now it's doing that mind shift and that behavior shift to help bring everyone else along and get there, so that we can start to see our results, better and faster.
Yeah, this is like pure organizational change. There's no easy way to do this, especially when there's a lot of inertia around you, right? So I've kind of been in a little bit of a scenario like it, but in my scenario, there wasn't people responsible for all the other pieces. So I could just go over and pick it up and do it, right? And over time, I just started to do the things, and it wasn't like everyone was on board when I started doing this initially. I had to beg for $500 to run Facebook ads, right? I had to beg for someone to invest $18,000 a year in HubSpot while we spent $27 million a year on sales, right? So these are the things that I had to do. And then over the first 6 months, moving very slowly, with a lot of friction. Got to see like 7 out of the, I don't know what it was maybe 7 out of 30 opportunities moved to close one that we generated, and like the entire sales team that had an outbound motion only closed whatever, like 20. So we went from like 0 contribution to contributing like 20% of the net new accounts that were coming in with like no money, no buy-in. And it was but the way to get people on board on this, and what I've seen is results. And so I think that what you'll need to do is figure out, how do I create enough space to create a data set where there's some results. Maybe the company's too large, maybe it's going to be, you know what I mean? There's definitely some roadblocks and challenges, but that's how I've done it in the past, and that's how I try and help people do it now, because there's only 2 ways: generate results that are undeniable, get customer insights that show people that things are different. But even when there are customer insights where people are like, I want to do things this way, I don't want to talk to a sales rep until this, companies won't ignore it. They call themselves customer centric, data's right in front of them, they don't act on it.
Yep.
So so those are the 2 ways that I've been successful, but there's times where it's not going to happen, right? Like I'm trying to think. I was in a sales call last Thursday. I was talking to someone, and like I was just like, this isn't gonna work out. You know what I mean? Because it was just clear that there was so much inertia for that company to change that like it's just not something that I'm going to sign my team up to do. So I recognize this isn't like a perfect answer, but that's, I think, the reality.
No, I think you're spot on as far as taking it in smaller steps, and I think the results are going to help with the inertia. So I appreciate the feedback.
Cool. If you can get through it, it's a great experience. Some of the most learnings I ever had was going through that, but
I'm enjoying the challenge.
It was hard.
Yes, it is.
Just to close this out, I thought you were going to get into a whole repackaging of content. I don't think you can grab your white papers and throw them into the social feed, but if the content is good, I think there's a way to, like, maybe that's what you're getting at, pulling out the most important points and redesigning them into an asset that will play really well on social, whether that's a carousel, a video, some type of designed asset.
Totally.
So,
yeah.
There definitely is a play there.
In the cut sheets or in that different stuff, like they talk about the integrations, they talk about the the stats that they've collected, things like that. All those items that right now are in like antiquated distribution methods, yes, could be taken and repackaged and move forward. But then moving forward, instead of building the antiquated method, I would just like build it the new way. But yes, you're right. I did cover that a little bit.
It could be a good way for you to manage this transition to Lisa, and like content that they feel is good, and you're taking the same things and just showing them how a different format might play well as you kind of bridge into kind of getting them over into the new way. Something to consider. I got 2 people DM'd me about how would you define good quality content when you talk about creative design content. Can you provide more details about what makes something good versus not good to give people something to go on?
The impact. And so like people are looking for like some easy metric to say like this thing was good, this one wasn't, right? Like some of my best videos that have been in studios where the quality wasn't this good. Has been when I was on a Zoom and different things like that. The only way to to try and understand or quantify the value of the content is based on the impact of the audience that you can estimate through engagement and other metrics. But one piece of content does not make or break this process. Nobody remembers the post that I made on last August 9th. Nobody remembers that post. But they remember the accumulation of the posts that have gotten put out. And so while companies continue to look at things and try and assess and measure the success of each individual piece of content using data and metrics that are totally flawed, they should instead look at this strategy way more holistically. Is the impact happening over time? Are people consuming the message? Do they actually understand it? So I'll give you some tangible things that I've used in the past, although we've moved away from it given the shift to native distribution. So these ones are not things that I lean on as much anymore, but just to give a couple examples. Back in the day, I would look at the scroll depth of people that went to the landing page. This is in 2017, so I would be tracking. I want to make sure that people click on the landing page and scroll at least 50%, because if they scrolled at least 50%, I know that they got the part of the message that I wanted them to get. And so I would use something like that as a surrogate. But now, given that people do not, like, I'm not optimizing for the landing page click or the 50% scroll anymore, because I know that most people are consuming the content in the feed. If you have a video, the videos you can track view through consumption. So on ads, you can do that. On organic, that the data, at least as far as I can tell, is not there for view through. So for video, it's cut and dry. Did people watch this whole video? Were those, and you can, if you do it on LinkedIn, you can look at the demographics. So you can see who watched the whole video. Was it the CRO or was it the SDR? And so you can see that type on video. You can see that data for consumption. But even with the consumption data, you don't know whether or not it made an impact. Just because somebody watched the video does not mean that the story that you told them moved them forward in buying or created an affinity to your company or communicated something that they learned that they didn't know before that will in the future sometime materialize to them considering to use the product. So as I continue to talk myself through this, I don't think that there's any clear-cut way. It comes down, it's subjective. And the subjectivity, I think, should be on how the audience responds. So I'm open to going back and forth on that one, but that's what I got.
No, I think that was good. I have another question kind of going in a different direction, but I think that was a great segment. Back to AMA. We're almost there to 9 o'clock too.
Wow.
Good show done.
Time flies.
All right.
Yeah.
Kevin, welcome to the show. The other Santa.
Howdy, howdy. Yeah.
Hey. What's up?
It wasn't just me rocking the Santa vibes tonight. Well, Chris, followed you on LinkedIn for a long time here. And then only recently, Nelson actually told me about your podcast. I've been tuning in. So long time, first time. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you here.
My question is, so I just today actually so by the way, BDR guy, SDR guy, sales guy.
Yeah.
This, I am, Nelson's post about the SDR model is dead is what got me going, what do you mean? And now all of a sudden here I am a month and a half later.
Okay.
I'm starting to really think that, yeah, there is a better way to do this. But today with a client, I had the VP of sales. He's like, well, Kevin, what are we getting here for our money? What am I getting? Because I do BDR consulting, building BDR teams, and I pulled out a spreadsheet and I walked him through it, and I was able to say look, man, if we do this amount of activities at this conversion rate, and your ACV and your sales accepted rate, and he was stoked because it all netted out to a revenue number. So I guess my question is, how does demand generation, is there that spreadsheet moment? You know what I mean? Because I want to say the SDR model is dead because I've done and coached so many SDRs that do cold calls where I'm in cold emails where I'm there's got to be a better way to do this. But that moment that VP of sales had today where he looked at the spreadsheet and went, I want that number. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, I can help you get to that activity metric, which will get to that conversion metric, which will get to. So how does demand generation have that spreadsheet moment, or do they? I guess is my question.
Yeah, can't say every, but most marketers will go back there and they'll take it, and then instead of activity, they'll start with leads, and they'll build the exact same thing with best case conversion rates and data that's not real. And they'll go and create the amount of leads that they need, the model breaks and they don't hit the target. That's what pretty much everyone does, right? That's probably what happens in outbound too. Because you optimize for the beginning part of the process, and then you don't actually get the things that materialize out, because in order to scale, to hit the number of leads or to hit the number of activities, you actually degrade the quality of the activities, you degrade the quality of the leads. They don't actually convert as well. The model breaks down. So that's what marketers do. Now,
so I guess my question to you more directly is, when people are hiring Refine Labs and they say, all right, Chris, like I'll spend $20K a month with you or $15K a month, what am I getting for that in terms of sales? You never roll out a spreadsheet? Like there's no spreadsheet for that?
We do. But before we do that, we run a process called Split the Funnel to identify their high intent conversions that have consistently good win rates that come through places that are scalable. And then from there, we can project out and create a similar model using our definitions and metrics that show realistic conversion rate numbers with a strategy that's used to maintain those. And then we put that together, which involves significantly lower leads, focused on ones that are coming and asking to buy, leveraging benchmarks of performance against 40 or 50 other companies that have gone through it with us, so that we're able to put it together a decent mathematical calculation. But when I see people build these spreadsheets and I walk into the models that people create like looking at models of growing 5,000% in a year. Things that are totally unrealistic. We generated, $100K a month in pipeline last year, and then this year we're going to go to 4 million. All we got to do is just get more leads, increase our double our conversion rate, do all these things that aren't going to happen. And when we go in and make the models, like the projections are typically growth between 100 and 200% a year, which for high growth companies are typically in the range. So the thing that breaks down here is that, and I just tell the truth to people, right? For some companies, we deliver major growth, more than 1,000% growth in pipeline. But I'm not going to go and promise that to everybody. I'm not going to have my customer come back to me when I'm not going to overpromise things like that. So we take a pretty, I would say, realistic process to planning and estimating those things. To really get the estimates, we would need to do like a robust Salesforce analysis before we started, and most companies don't want to do that, so we leverage more of an estimate.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate that.
Totally.
Good to have you on, Kevin. Hope to see you next week. Our good friend Carl wants to come on. He has a question for us. Let me get you on here, Carl. It's good to see you. Should be on.
Yeah. Hey, how's
All right.
it going?
Hey.
Good to see you. How you doing?
Good. How's everybody doing?
Fantastic.
Good. So yeah, we question I guess for both of you. So we recently just acquired a new company internationally, and like I guess I have two parts of this question, like a cultural question, and then like it's both related to integration. So how do we integrate a new marketing and BDR team from a cultural perspective, and then how do we integrate them using the method that we've been using, like create demand, capture demand, dark social, when I know they still do it from the lead gen side? Like, it's not quite sure, like based on just how from a culture we're very open, we don't like force anything down. Do we like go through their CRM and just show them all the new opportunities that we have? Just say, hey, you know what, we're doing it this way, we're gonna integrate you in. And I guess that's sort of the cultural question too, because we have our BDR, like our BDR team reports into marketing, theirs reports into sales. So how do we bring everything kind of together in a way that's kind of harmonious and not, just we're now forcing you to do this?
Yeah, so I can point out like an exact example of this event being a very great place for customer research. because Carl's asking the question, but what he's really asking for is how do I get all these people up to speed on the strategy that works way better than what they're doing right now? So we can it's on the roadmap for us to do that. Like, just this is a sidebar, Carl, but like our roadmap is to formalize the strategy, to set the metrics, to create examples of exactly what the dashboard should look like, to give people access to split all the templates and data to split the funnel on their own, to give them access to the strategy of what we do on paid social, so that people can quickly get up to speed on what the strategy, understand the strategy, and be able to implement it. So that's on the roadmap, but it's not going to help you in the super immediate term. So, I mean, I feel like you kind of have some of the answers. I would share pick one or two pieces of podcast content. I would create the reports of the before and after and talk through the experience that you went through and how you figured this out, right? Because I talked through it too. 5 years ago, I was doing all the same dumb shit that this company's doing right now, right? And so, like, at one point you were doing those things too, and then you figured out a different way. So trying to go back to what are the things that I had to figure out in order to start to believe these things, that might be one thing. And then I'll just point out to people that, like, the integration of most acquisitions fails. It's just pure data. So because of things like this, that there's just separate things. But I think this is you need to treat this like people they mean well. They're probably very talented. They just need some education. So I would help to educate them.
I can add a different perspective, Carl. I've been at a few different companies and have probably been a part of merging like 7 different companies over 3 different companies that I worked at, like into the broader one. So I think number one, you have a lot of time. It takes a long time for things to like integrate post an acquisition. Typically, nothing is going to happen for like at least 6 months, like literally nothing. Both companies are just going to continue to operate independently as they have been. So you have time. There's going to be a sense of urgency and excitement right when it happens, but that's been my consistent experience. I think the second thing is you need to understand what the intent was behind the acquisition. So whether it's your leader or the C-level executives, you need to get more details on why did this acquisition happen and what was discussed or what was the intent behind that. So people will say integration, but there's always usually more factors in the mix. And so depending on who you work for, who you have access to, like really understanding why that happened and what those long-term plans are. And I think the next thing is I would try to identify who like your counterpart is at the acquired company, and just set up a meet and greet where you learn, kind of to Chris's point on interviewing and just listening and learning. I think establish rapport, establish a relationship. I wouldn't even begin making any real plans on what to do until you have actual clarity on what the strategy is for it and you start to build a relationship. Once you get to the point, if it really is like you're going to become one team, you're going to merge products, they need to adopt your strategy, then the way to go about it is really learn what they're doing, show them what you're doing, provide data and information about why it works, offer your help to partner with them to implement a test or some small portion of the strategy with their customer base to kind of bring them along. But before you even get into that, I would really focus on trying to understand like what the original point was and kind of what leadership wants, because you can go down a path and there might be other plans at play. And then I wouldn't this is gonna take a long time. I guarantee it. So I wouldn't worry too much about having to have this all figured out right away. So couple points from my experience. Hope that helps.
Yeah. Like I know the intent is really, it pretty much opens us up to an international market, because instead of us having to put all the systems, processes, start moving people to different locations, we now have that people there. And I know from a just overall cultural fit, it works. Our C-suite met with their C-suite and they really got along and the cultures really jive. But yeah, that would be the intent. But Because I've felt this before, but on the other side, when you're being acquired, and it's excitement, but also like unsure, like what any of your processes would be kept. Like we've already got questions on, oh, our entire thing is on HubSpot. Like they use HubSpot CRM too. We're on, our CRM is Salesforce, so there's that question. But they really love it. But I get the feeling where like, you're a little unsure because you've built all these systems that are, they work for you, but now it's gonna change for sure. It's gonna change on that other side.
Yeah, and if they were the acquired company, people are definitely also wondering if their job is at stake, even if they've been assured that their job is fine. Because so I think being mindful of the feeling sounds like you already have that empathy and you already are. What I would also say is continue to ask leadership too, because original intent behind acquisitions can change once you start to uncover how things are actually operating at the company, and no amount of due diligence prior to an acquisition really gives you a good sense of what's going on at a company. I've had multiple acquisitions where they just literally resold it because they were like, never mind, I don't want this, where they continued to operate completely independently and never merged. And in the instances where they merged, typically most people at the acquired company get let go and brands get shut down. So like that's typically what happens. Not to say that there won't be a more optimistic ending to your story, but that's why I would recommend like waiting a little bit, checking in with leadership, getting to know your counterparts to just build relationships. But I would let things play out a little bit more unless you have like a very specific directive from your boss to start working on something.
No, what's really interesting about it is they were our direct international competitor. Like we were starting to gather plans, like competitive data. We knew we were winning some of their customers and we were losing potential prospects to them. So now but it was interesting because it just made sense. They're like, it makes sense if we just acquired them, and then we did. And now we're like, okay, so all the data and all the strategies and all that we were thinking, we just wanted to keep aware. Now we have them in the fold. It's just like I just want to be also mindful. Like I've been there, I felt that way. So now I just don't want to trample and be like, yeah, that sucks. We're not doing that. We're doing this. And we maybe are, but not in the way that just you want to make sure they're brought along rather than, you're not. And then.
Yeah, good question. Exciting times, Carl.
Oh yeah.
The last thing I'll say is the international component is interesting. So like you don't know what you don't know, right? About what goes on in that location, whatever it happens to be. But you'll have to come back and keep us posted as things play out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, our good friend Patrick had another question. I'm tempted to bring him on to be my closer tonight. You ready for one more, Chris?
Yeah, is Nelson not closing?
He is in a place with some background noise tonight.
Okay, I can't. You're in the top of the screen. I can't really tell, but okay.
Oh.
So Patrick will close it out. He's got the honors. Let's do it.
Yeah, I was asking Nelson's questions on his behalf, but Patrick, you're climbing the question asker ladder, and so you're going to be my closer tonight. Congratulations. The floor is yours.
I'm honored. I'm honored to have this position. So I was just going back on what you said before about marketing stuff like that. So what I was really trying to get at, now I've forgotten with all the intro and fair, but essentially what I was asking was how much of the clients that you work with right now, in your opinion, do you think the gap between what they're doing and what they should do is just applying fundamental marketing tactics to the modern world, modern channels, versus they're actually missing something strategic or tactical on those channels? Because I feel like a lot of what has been said, maybe I've been listening to old ones and maybe we've moved a lot past that in some of the newer ones, is just, hey, figure out what your customers want, figure out the channel you're using, apply the thing, create content for that channel because that's what it's for. So just wondering, in your opinion, did you see a lot of that, or is it just sort of like, no, they're missing completely strategical things based around LinkedIn, etc.?
Yeah, I'm going to talk. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to talk about this a lot more on Thursday because the strategy component is huge. The strategy being, who are we going after? Why? Could we segment that even further? If we could, how would we do that? Would we use Zoom Info's company size data, or are we going to go out and talk to 30 people and ask them questions to really understand and then leverage those qualitative insights to further segment, which allows us then to adjust the messaging to make it way more narrow, which then allows us to think about the product strategy differently, how we actually go and market and sell to those accounts, right? So I call it marketing fundamentals, which would be basically the inputs to strategy, customer research, that type of data are inputs to strategy, which then companies basically, if you think about it as like a house with a foundation, like the foundation is the strategy. And so companies are over here with a house for a 2-story building, and they build their building. And if they went out and rethought about their strategy, they would build a different foundation, which would allow them to build a much bigger building or something. You know what I mean? You get the analogy. And so what you see from at the tactical level, the channels that they use, those things, it all looks the same, right? Every company is doing the same stuff. But how you do it and what actual story you're telling and who you're telling it to and whether or not that resonates are really what matters. And so I find that companies they miss at both. If you miss at the fundamentals, the inputs to strategy, you miss across the board because you're making decisions without the necessary data to do it, right? So I think, and I can't speak for all of my customers, so I'm not in the details of that much, but I can speak broadly about the market. And broadly about the market, I see that a lot of marketing teams don't do these things. They don't talk to customers. They don't spend time in communities. They don't do win-loss analysis. They don't ask, how did you hear about us in the forums? They don't collect any customer research data to drive strategy. And then from there, every other decision is flawed. That's so then you have a different strategy because you don't really understand how your buyers want to buy because you haven't talked to them, that you continue to run a go-to-market strategy that was built for 2013 where you want your salesperson to talk to somebody when they're cold. So then that impacts your marketing strategy. So your marketing strategy is only focused on just generating contacts that your sales team can try and get into a meeting, and you can see how this, and then because you're only focused on generating leads, you only do certain tactics that are optimized for leads. Where if you, this whole thing where I figured this stuff out is if you understand how your buyer wants to buy, then the entire thing downstream would change. If you actually respected that piece of it, the entire thing of what we're doing, it's not because Facebook and LinkedIn are cool, it's because it aligns to what people do today to get information and discover things. So I'm not sure if I answered your question directly, but I think that it's across the board, from the fundamentals that goes into the strategy that gets mostly seen at the tactical level. Got a follow up?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I guess my assumption was, it feels like a bit of both. You're missing the storytelling, but you're missing why you're telling that story. So it's not one or the other. It's sort of bits and pieces of everything. And that, I guess, in your opinion, does that then that's what requires this sort of deep analysis and question asking to break that down as to why X? Because I feel like your approach is very much why everything, almost.
Yeah.
The foundation up.
You read my mind. The number one thing that B2B marketers miss about their customer is the why. You don't get the why from your quantitative data. You don't get the why from listening to gong calls. You don't get the why from doing those things. You need to get the insights as to why people think a certain way, or why people make a certain decision, or why people measure things a certain way, is all of the insight. It tells you how people think. And how people, then once you understand how people think, you can think about, how am I going to tell a story to teach someone something so that they potentially think differently, or it opens up their mind to something different. So because people don't have the why, like why a buyer wouldn't want to talk to my sales rep until they had these 6 pieces of information, like pricing, like seeing what the product looks like in the back end, like basic shit, talk to somebody that's used the product before. Like if you can't understand why someone would want to do that, like it's a missing piece. It's so obvious you wouldn't talk to someone, you'd have the why, which would then help you change. So I'm not saying that if marketers went out and talked to customers that all this stuff would get solved, but you'd certainly see a lot of the cracks and the holes in the strategy right now. Because if you literally talk to people and then you look across the whole thing, you're going to get immediate flags: misalignment. We're doing this, our buyer wants us to do this, it's different. We're doing this, our buyer wants us to do this, it's different. And what the model that I created subconsciously, that's now real, and we're operating at 50 companies, was only just at one company, collecting the data, making the adjustments, to make it as efficient as possible from a customer experience standpoint and from a revenue generation standpoint, both those things. So yeah, we'll get more into the strategy on Thursday. I'm not sure if you'll be able to catch it from you in New Zealand or Australia. I'm not sure you'll be able to catch it because of the time.
Yeah. No, that's helpful. I'll have to watch it back. I actually have a conflict at the same time, so I actually will be up. It's 3 a.m. or something. So, but the following week, yeah, you can expect. I'm sure I'll have a question or 3.
All right. Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Patrick.
Appreciate it.
All right. Closing thoughts.
All right, everyone. This has been
Santa.
This has been the Happy Holidays edition of Demand Gen Live. We'll have a couple of videos posted. It's been great to spend some time with you. I'm going to let you know I had to take off the Santa costume midway through. I'm still wearing the hat. It's like been really hot in here. Been like thinking about how warm it is, but we made it through. It was cool. We've noticed that over time, doing a couple of these things just to spice it up has been fun. It's fun for me, so I hope that you all appreciate us putting a little bit of effort into that. I'm very excited about this talk on Thursday. I got the spark of why to do this because I had a keynote with a company today. And as I continue to get more and more into the details, what I'm realizing is that B2B companies have all of the resources that they need and all of the talent that they need to do everything that I'm saying. The people are capable of doing it. The strategy is flawed. The go-to-market strategy is flawed because of where they get their information about what to do. If they were able to change the go-to-market strategy, all of the people in there are super capable. And so I'm just like, I've seen it enough times now to know that this is not like you need to go out and hire, and maybe some people need to go out and hire a new person, but for the most part of what I'm seeing broadly is that you don't actually need new people or a lot of new skills. You need a new strategy. And so that's what I'm going to be talking on Thursday, and really hope to see you all there. And
Good to see everyone.
appreciate all of you, and we'll see you. We'll see you next week, and then we'll be off the week. I think the date is the 28th. We will be off that week. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Next Tuesday. Bye, everyone.